some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Looks like we had something happen to our intro video, folks. So welcome to the Raising Cain Show. We're digging into some interesting stories tonight. There's been a whole lot going on with a lot of talk about the Epstein Files, but not a whole lot there. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about that. But tonight, I'm honored to have a true American patriot joining us, Lieutenant Colonel Berney Flowers, a retired military officer with decades of service under his belt. Lieutenant Colonel Flowers brings a wealth of his experience from the front lines to the airwaves. He's a prominent voice with Veterans for America First, a group unafraid to tackle the tough issues facing our nation's heroes and our country at large. Fresh off appearances at Newsmax and BTT TV, he's here to break down the headlines, shaking up the military, shaking up our veterans, and national security issues, from troop deployments at the border to escalating tensions abroad. Buckle up, folks. This is going to be a no-holds-barred conversation that you won't want to miss. So, sir, thank you for joining the show tonight. I'm actually excited to get into some of the topics. I was hoping we'd be able to have something to talk about regarding the Epstein list that we were supposed to get, dropped on us today. But to be honest with you, I kind of had the suspicion that it was not going to be the big reveal that everybody was expecting. What say you?
Nate, I appreciate it. You call me Bernie. That's what my friends call me. And I've been following you for a while, and I'm glad to finally be on your show. I never had thought it would turn out like this, but man, thanks for having me.
Well, Bernie, we've got a whole hour to discuss a lot of different things that I want to get into, and I've broken out. I want to just touch base on this issue of the Epstein Files first and foremost. Obviously, political commentary is what both you and I are very much into these days. And this has been probably the biggest story that has been being talked about. I think everybody that has seen cash get placed in there has been looking forward to this. We just found out Bongino, is the new deputy, Pam Bondi. These are people that we expect are going to take serious the job of rooting out the deep state out of the FBI and out of the Justice Department. And yet it seems today all these promises were made, and I think a lot of people are let down. I'm looking, and it seems to me like, you've got the natives are restless and they're coming out with their pitchforks and their torches. So what are your thoughts? I mean, why do you think that? Do you think somebody screwed up here? Somebody made a mistake, got over their skis, and then kind of had to do something?
I wouldn't say that they screwed up. I think they might have overplayed their hand a little bit, because when you're talking about the federal government, there's 6 ways to Sunday to slow people down. You know as well as I do that the deep state is real. There are people in the New York FBI field office that probably are not too happy to see Bondi and those guys coming. And so they're going to do everything they can without getting fired to slow down the process. It will happen. Trump's only been in office for less than a month now. So, we need to slow down and just take this thing properly, because we're talking about the law. And if it would be a shame for somebody's legal rights to be trampled upon and find out that we got some guilty guy that goes free just because of some administrative or procedural mistake. So they just need to slow down a little bit, make sure they get their feet, under them. And as you say, don't get too far out in front of your skis.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. In fact, I was very concerned about that very issue. Look, at the end of the day, is it titillating to know what the names are that are on the list of people who were involved in stuff or who's being investigated? Yes. But I know, as well as you know, that if they don't do things right, then there will be no justice and it'll
Yeah.
just be nothing but rumor. And the last thing I want to see there be no justice. I want to see justice happen. I want to see these people who have committed crimes go to jail. And more importantly, we know that they have more information because they couldn't have convicted Ghislaine Maxwell for human trafficking if she didn't traffic to people. So they
Exactly.
clearly have information. But like you said, and I saw a comment come out that there's a lot of information apparently stuck up at the Southern District of New York, and I think that's part of the problem. You had yesterday, or I think it was yesterday or the day before, I wrote an article on this, but Garrett O'Boyle, who's one of the suspendables FBI whistleblower, he came out saying that he's got a source on the inside telling him that they're destroying information and that they were actually, they had some off-book servers,
Yeah.
that were basically standalone, not part. Because I'm very familiar. I worked at the FBI. I was an FBI whistleblower. They have the most advanced records management system in existence that I've ever seen. And I can
Oh,
tell
yeah.
you, if what they're doing was on the FBI net, which is their internal system, there's no way it's getting deleted because it's backed up in multiple different ways. But from what Garrett was saying, there are standalone servers. Now he's talking to somebody on the inside that he, still in contact with. I was actually in the information assurance division at the FBI. And I can tell you, there are standalone servers. I know for a fact because what my job was there was to set up the vulnerability management system that scans all of the systems that are networked. And we had this issue of what do you do about standalone systems? Well, you have to go and you have to manually scan them and hook up to them and scan them, periodically. But I never was looking at it from the standpoint of protecting information from those who might want to delete that information. That was not part of my job. So I wasn't looking at that as a risk, but that certainly is a risk to things like FOIA.
Yeah.
And I think now, one thing that we learned was, during the Obama and the Clinton years, they were very much in the habit of using email servers that were not official government. Remember, Obama got caught with a Gmail account, and they would draft a message and leave it in the in there, so that way somebody could go and then look it up without it ever being sent. They had ways of getting around being caught by our friends over at NSA as they capture everything that gets
There
sent.
you go.
So
And yeah, these people are terrible, and they're the worst kinds of crooks, and they're paying our money, paying taxpayer dollars to keep money away from the American people, to keep money
yeah,
to not be transparent. And as I said before, you're an IT guy. I've got some IT stink on me too for a long time, and the issue of the day is it's going to take a while to find these people. But the way I see it, we got about 2 years before the midterms. It'll all be settled by then, and we'll start seeing some indictments.
yeah, I agree. I do think that we are going to see indictments, and if anything, they've got to make up for this kind of letdown. And so I think the best way for them to make that up to people is to bring the indictments.
Yeah.
Now, it was interesting because Pam Bondi was on she was interviewed by Jesse Waters last night on Fox News. And I don't know if you caught the interview, but at the end of the interview, he asked her specifically about if she could talk at all about the supposed investigation, into Jim Comey. And
Hmm.
this is over Jim Comey's use of off books, computers and doing, off book investigations, in fact, involving honeypots, two women that were, used to honeypot the Trump campaign. Now, she said, I don't know anything about that. That's kind of a different statement than what I'm used to hearing, which is, I can neither confirm nor deny, or I can't talk about an ongoing, potentially ongoing investigations. You know, she said, I don't know anything about that. And I have to take her on her word that she didn't know anything about it. What was surprising to me is that the Washington Times brought this out, and they've supposedly talked to a whistleblower who came forward blowing the whistle on Jim Comey's use of off-book, activities, basically to honeypot Trump. And so, why in the world she would not know about that is kind of surprising to me. So I don't know if that was just a flub on her part, and what she meant to say was, "I can't talk about." I can neither confirm nor deny. I mean, that's the standard answer. Or if she really didn't know about it, but it's been out for a couple of days at least, and I would
Well,
think that would be a high priority thing to know.
I didn't see the interview, but I've met Comey. I've shook his hand before, like a wet fish,
Yep,
wasn't impressed at all. But I will say, from my perspective, Bondi is probably overwhelmed with, even though
sure.
she was AG of Florida, what she's probably seeing is a horrendous amount of information. And you got to give her some grace on this, because she's probably just overloaded. Talk about a double fire hose of information. So give her a little time, give her a
Well, I hope I
little
hope that
grace.
that yeah, I agree. I hope though the next time that she goes, onto Fox, that she'll be a little better prepared. Make sure that she knows the questions that they're going to be asking, so that way at least, she doesn't
Yeah.
get caught off guard like that. Because that really, I think it blows the confidence for a lot of us that are hopeful that there's going to be real change, and we already are seeing real change. They're without
Oh
a
yeah.
doubt. I know there's going to be real change, and especially within the FBI. I have no doubts whatsoever in Cash and Bongino's understanding of the problems of the weaponization of the federal government, the FBI in particular, and the weaponization of the intelligence tools that are not meant to be used on the American citizens. Now, you and I both have some background with NSA, and
Oh yeah.
so I'm very familiar with Section 702 and FISA, intelligence authorities. I was read on to all of that. And I have been shouting from the rooftops since the last month of Obama's, his term, when they changed the rules so that they could pass unmasked information between the intelligence agencies, because that was not in place when I was at NSA. If you unmasked somebody and it turned out to be an American, you'd delete it because it
Yeah.
was not captured in accordance with the Constitution at that point. The whole system was designed for going after foreigners, not for going after American citizens. And yet there was a federal judge, that announced that there were over 258,000 illegal uses of Section 702 to spy on Americans, mostly those who were there on January 6th, and also some that were at the George Floyd protests. So it's a bipartisan issue, but it's a clear violation of people's, their Fourth Amendment. And
Agreed.
I've got a major issue with that.
Well, so do I. The Patriot Act should be abolished. Truth is, as you very well know, the whole Five Eyes deal is a setup so that we can use, or they can use, foreign countries to spy on us and we spy on them. And the American people have no understanding, because if you haven't been in the military, in the intelligence community, or some of the
Yeah.
law enforcement type stuff, if you're not familiar with 12 666, you have no bearing and no understanding. And it's people like
Yeah,
us. I'm not trying to give myself any special privileges or anything like that, but the bottom line is we got to hold them accountable. We got to let them know that
absolutely.
they're being watched.
Well, and I know Bongino has talked about a lot of this stuff on a show. And I, that's one of the reasons I'm very hopeful. And so has Cash. Both of them have talked about those specific tools and about the intelligence authorities and their misuse. And so that's probably, to me, if you were to ask me, what do I think is the most important thing? It's probably that, because
Yeah.
if they can abuse that, then that means they can get blackmail on anybody. And even if
Yes.
somebody's a saint, they've got a child or they've got a spouse or somebody they care about that has some dirt or looked at something they shouldn't have been looking at, or is, saying something that would be embarrassing if it got out. And so knowing that they've used these tools, I think about judges, members of Congress, important business leaders, things like that. That concerns me. And that's what I think. Like when I think of deep state, that's what I think about,
Yeah.
when it comes to the deep state,
Well,
is the
it's
ability
funny.
to
I mean, this is what this whole Epstein thing is about. This is blackmail. They've,
Yep.
they trick these guys into doing XYZ, and then they blackmail them, and they use clandestine government means against American citizens. And this has got to stop. People outside the business have no understanding how deep this goes. These folks are trying to take away our First Amendment rights. I saw Aisha Presley. I think she's a congressman out of Connecticut. She's making a speech, and she basically said that out in the open that her goal was to censor the American people. It's a quote, it's right out there. So people
Yep.
need to understand that our First Amendment rights are a very, very important thing, and this is all tied together. I know I sound like some kind of conspiracy theorist, but I believe that this World Economic Forum, a lot of these people are, working together. And, I know I sound like some kind of conspiracy theorist, but I'm right. Okay.
That even that word conspiracy theorist, was created by the CIA in order to
There you
propagate out
go.
there to embarrass people. But the reality is, it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's conspiracy
No.
fact. We
Yes.
know this. When let me ask. In fact, I want to go on to something else, but that relates very closely to it, and that is classified information, classification, and declassification. You and I both have probably dealt with information that we've seen, that is classified, and it has right on there the date that it's supposed to automatically drop off. And in
Yep.
order for them to keep something classified, it has to go through a review process, and they have to basically say, okay, this still has to remain classified. We've seen that they've kept the JFK files largely classified for, gosh, I don't know how long it's been, but it's been way
Plus
over the
60
amount.
years.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think, top secret's supposed to automatically drop off after 10 years. I think secret after 5 years.
Yeah.
So my question is this: what possible justification could they have? It's interesting because, and I don't work in those circles anymore, so I can speculate about these things. But I think about what Cash said in an interview that he gave, where he talked about that all the stuff that we want to know has already been declassified. He says the things that are still classified are things that we would have no way of it's not even on our mind. We're not even looking there. And of course, I can't remember who the host was for that interview, but he asked him, well, you can't just leave us hanging like that. What do you mean? He goes, all I can say is that everything that you're looking at has already been released. So the stuff that's not been released is things that have nothing to do with anything you're thinking about. So it makes me wonder what in the heck he's talking about.
I love Cash to death. I'm a big supporter. I am not going to criticize him, but there's well over 1 billion documents that are classified that should not be. And more
I agree.
importantly, there is far too many people walking around with top secret caveated clearances. And, each one of those, costs what, about $80,000 a pop. There's some money we could save there because everybody doesn't need a TSSCI. And the whole need to know thing, there's a lot of things that could be fixed. And we have to fix these things. We can't afford this anymore. But back to what Cash was saying, I don't want to dog him or I don't want to doubt him. We need to give him some grace. But the issue of the day is there's a lot of stuff out there that we need to know and that should not be classified. And it would be a lot cheaper to unclassify those things.
Yeah.
Remember, the president is the ultimate classification authority, and nobody can tell him he can't declassify things.
What are your thoughts on Tulsi Gabbard, as the ODNI? She's going to have a huge role, I think, in declassification, seeing if things are overclassified and things like that in that position. What are your thoughts about that? And what do you know about the ODNI's role? And because that's one that's always been, it was a role that wasn't there when I was in the military. But it came about much later. And I know it came about really after 9/11, and they wanted to basically have like a go between all of these different intelligence assets and everything. But what do you think is going to be the thing that she's going to have to look at when it comes to breaking down what's overclassified?
General Clapper, bless his heart. You remember him? He was
Yes,
there
I
for a
do.
long time, and he kind of ran a fiefdom, and I really believe that they just went too far. They made one person kind of a czar. It's too late to go back, but the issue of the day is that person has a huge amount of authority, and there's a lot of people that are deep state operatives, I really believe, that are there to try to trip her up. So she's got to get herself surrounded by some old heads like you and I that really know the
Yeah.
system, and declassifying a lot of those materials, putting these people back in their place. We've got far too many intelligence agencies doing the same thing. Sometimes they run into each other. So I'm a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard. I think she's up to the challenge, but
am
it's
too.
all about her finding the right people to surround her and carry out. And I'm going to tell you right now, where I was sitting at Fort Meade, I saw some very senior officers. I was a Northcom rep, which meant I was a 4 stars representative. I'm sitting at the big boy table, and I saw some people dragging their feet during Trump's first administration, things that I was quite surprised at. So don't want to get too deeply into that, because who knows, they may be listening. But the issue of the day is I give her all credit. I am looking forward to her, cleaning this thing up and get rid of some of the bad eggs, because we've got far too many regulations and far too much overlap, and all this costs us money. And obviously it's not been effective.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right on that. I want to ask you about the Ukraine. Obviously, there's going on there right now. It's all over the news. You've got I saw something where the U.S. Treasury person was over there and talking to him, and Zelensky was screaming at him because he wasn't going to agree to some deal with the minerals. And then you see people talking about that there's agreements being made over minerals. So it's hard to know what's true, what's not. And then I saw something also, I think it was today, that Putin is talking about making a deal with the U.S. to share exploration over rare earth minerals. What is your thoughts on this from a geopolitical standpoint? I kind of see it from the perspective of, we don't want, the previous administration essentially pushed Russia into the arms of China, which I think is a very dangerous thing. And yeah, I do think that it's not a good thing that Russia invaded the Ukraine, but I also understand why they did. And I do feel like the fact that the Ukraine was not a member of NATO, why the heck did we involve ourselves over there in that? So,
Well, first, let me give you a little background.
okay.
I was there in 2003 for an exercise called Partnership for Peace. I was the only American soldier on this detail. They sent communications experts from each NATO country, and we were supposed to be teaching the Ukrainian military how to fend against the big Russian bear. And so I'm over there, And I found out that there's such a thing as a Azov battalion, as in neo-Nazis. So fast forward
Mm.
many, many years, and we have been sending resources and funds to neo-Nazis who literally hate us. So I got a real issue with that. You mentioned earlier about the idea that, you know, we made some promises to NATO after the wall fell down. We've made some promises to the Russians after the wall fell down with the intention of maintaining the peace. And we didn't keep our end of the bargain. We were not supposed to be recruiting the Ukraine into NATO. That's supposed to be a buffer zone. So
Yeah.
with that said, we got some things we need to fix. And I think that Russia, as in Putin, and Trump as the major superpowers in this world, them sitting down to talk and leaving Zelensky out of this, he's proven that he is not to be trusted. They've lost almost 2 million men. They're snatching boys, 13, 14-year-old boys up out of the street and conscripting them. And
Mhm.
then it's just a great meat grinder, and it should not be. And as far as those rare earth elements, well, you know, the word on the street is we've spent what, about $500 billion. If they'll admit to that, you know it's more. And Trump,
Yep.
being the great negotiator that he is, you know he's going to want to get something out of this. So we've spent a lot of money. Yeah, but Trump's going to make sure that we get our fair share, and let's bring this thing to an end as fast and as peacefully as possible. And the way to do that is to talk directly to Putin. He's the guy in charge. Make this stop, and then dig everything out of the ground that we need. And, you know, that cobalt and molybdenum and all those other things that make our industries go, well, that stuff's hard to come by. And if they've got a pile of it, I think they owe it to us.
You
So
know,
did I answer your
it's
question?
interesting on that. Yeah, absolutely. And on that front, you know, this was one of the things that really upset me about Afghanistan and our withdrawal, because we had spent hundreds of millions of dollars doing the exploration in Afghanistan for rare earth minerals. And then the way that Biden pulled out and basically just left a bunch of our equipment there, that the equipment that was left there was minuscule to the amount of rare earth minerals that we had gone and spent our taxpayers' dollars to explore and had already had deals made up. Now, guess who's mining it all?
The
China.
Chinese.
That's right. So I'm glad that Trump is making these deals, because we absolutely need those rare earth minerals. You know, people don't understand the arms race that we are up against, you know, when it comes to AI and technology and all of that. We need those minerals so that we can actually keep up with, you know, the adversary. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the real honest to God truth of it. I hear people all the time say, why are we doing stuff with AI in our military? You know, we shouldn't be doing that. Look, there's ways that we need to be doing things carefully. And I definitely don't want to see, you know, Skynet, you
Of
know,
course
and
not.
have AI take over the world. And in fact, Elon Musk has warned about that, as he sees it as the greatest existential threat to human life is AI, which is
I
why
agree.
he's so involved in it. But at the same time, if we just allow our adversaries to get a technological advantage over us, it won't be long before we're speaking Chinese.
I
So,
agree 150%. And you know, they've
yeah,
got a huge presence in Africa where most of these rare earth
yeah,
elements come from. They've been working
yep,
hard, and we have been doing, oh, we've been offering them LGBT woke politics, and the Chinese have been building bridges over there. So thank God for Trump. He's
yep,
recognized the problem. He's trying to correct it.
yeah, yeah. Now, there's been some deployment of our troops to the southern border, and so I'm
Yep.
curious about your thoughts on that. Trump, of course, designating the cartels as terrorist organizations. You have Guantanamo, which I had a really great guest on the other day, talking about the Guantanamo has not just the side for, you know, the really bad guys, but also has migrant detention centers as well, which a lot of Haitians were sent to. they've pretty much have moved out almost all of the post 9/11 characters, and they've made deals with Oman and a few other places to get those guys out of there to make room, I think, for the really bad guys, and then also for those that we have issues being able to deport them back to their country. But you've got this other thing that Trump has done. He made an executive order to reinstate the death penalty at the federal level. And there are courthouses that are being built in Guantanamo right now, according to reports from Catherine Herridge. And you've got an expansion of the migratory, side as well, I believe, is the hardened criminals side as well, the combatants. I see everything kind of being set up so that if we get into an engagement with the cartels and these guys get caught, or even these guys that are MS-13 or Tren de Aragua or whatever the gang group that is in our country gets caught, what they found is that MS-13, these guys, they get into our prison system and then they build a network very quickly. And I think their goal is to basically move them out of our country as quickly as possible, place them at Guantanamo, try them there. If they are involved in, capital crimes, execute them there. And if they're not, then deport them once they've served their time to their, their nation of origin. What are your thoughts about this? What do you see as the challenges for our military troops that are at the border if we end up in some sort of engagement with the cartels?
Here's the thing, and you know this as well as I do as a military guy. A military is only as strong as its leader. And if you can tell by the recruitment numbers that have gone up astronomically since Trump won, our military is ready and chomping at the bit to defend our country. They sent down Marines. We've got all kinds of technical stuff that we can do to secure the border. If I'm not mistaken, the border numbers have slowed down to a trickle well over. I mean, it's been a 90% plus 90% shutdown since Trump took over. So the strategy of taking those people to Guantanamo is just super because, again, they're on American soil. There's only so much that you can do to them, but they have infiltrated a lot of this country. They're even up here in Maryland and Virginia. All kinds of crazy things are happening. And I will say that some of these sanctuary city mayors and county executives, they are trying to protect these people. But the issue of the day, get them out of the country, and they no longer have American citizenship. You might as well call them an enemy combatant. And I got no problem with that. But as far as our military is concerned, that's why we pay half of our salaries and taxes to protect this country. So let's protect our borders and get these people out of here as fast as we can. And I doubt the Mexican military or the new Mexican progressive president is going to have so much to say other than a few snappy words. But, both Mexico and Canada are totally dependent on our economy. They're totally dependent on President Trump's good graces. So I don't see too many problems there. And again, we've got the firepower. We just need the will to make it happen. And I'm sure that Trump has the will to make it happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think we've got a good Department of Defense, a Secretary of Department of Defense. I think that the goal of ridding our military of all of the woke nonsense that it really has destroyed the morale and the mission of the military. The military, it cracks me up when I hear people talk about, you've got to have equal opportunity in the military and all this. Look, if I was, blind, I could not serve in the military. And if I have certain mental health problems, I can't serve in the military. And the reason why is because the military has a very, specific mission, and mission readiness is everything. And you don't want to be working on the battlefield that you got some guy next to you who's going to start having a panic attack, or, it's like, I remember seeing when I was in, I was living in Japan, working for the Department of the Navy as a Navy civilian, and they had, I think it was the GW came in, and there were all these guys that were talking about stress cards. Now, have you heard about? You've heard about?
I've heard.
I don't even remember there being anything at all. When I was in the Army, that didn't exist. Of course, you got yelled at. In fact, they
You're
do that
supposed
on
to get
purpose.
yelled at.
Yeah, they want to see how you're going to react under pressure. And if
Yeah.
you can't hack it, that's a good sign that you don't belong there. But yet they had issued these stress cards for Navy sailors, so that if they're getting yelled at, they can hold up a stress card and say, I need my safe space. I'm just thinking to myself, what kind of safe space are you going to get in a combat situation?
You're not going
You
to
gotta
get
be
any
kidding.
safe space. It's funny. I was a communications officer and I spent time doing satellites. That was kind of my bread and butter. And so years later, I find myself in Iraq and Afghanistan at Fallujah and Camp Victory, hanging out with the Army and hanging out with
Yeah.
the Marine Corps. And I had to keep up. And so the issue of the day is bullets. And I got shot at a few times. I was in a couple of explosions. Thank God I didn't suffer any pain. But the issue of the day is if you're not able to keep up, you're going to get somebody killed out there. And that's the God's honest truth, that combat changes you. And there's no room for woke. And another thing, if I may, this CQ Brown, who is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff,
I was
as
just
a
going to
black
ask you about
guy,
that. So
yeah, a lot of people, oh yeah, it's so terrible. I heard some preacher talking about he was very angry that CQ Brown was sacked. Well, here's the thing. CQ Brown was responsible for the military not meeting its recruiting goals. So that 18 to 20-year-old gun shooter who protects this country, who really puts steel on target, if you don't get that guy, you don't have a military. So
yeah.
I don't care about DEI. I don't care about woke. I don't care about any of that stuff. Our soldiers should not have two mommies. So I'm glad that guy is gone. And President Trump needs to surround himself with his people, whomever he chooses. If he chooses you, I'd be fine. We got to trust the guy and let him do what he needs to do. But, remember Milley, that guy.
That guy should be he should have been court-martialed and put in prison.
He needs to go somewhere, and it ain't.
They can bring him out of retirement and court-martial.
I
think they should.
I get mad just thinking about that character. But the issue of the day is that Trump's made the right choice. The Coast Guard admiral, who I actually knew her, and when I was over at DHS, and I don't know what it was, but it just seemed like these people were trying to spin us into the ground. When I was over there, I was part of the Afghan retrograde. And so we bought 185,000 Afghans here. We told the American people that those people had been vetted and vaccinated. I didn't lie to the American people, but somebody did. And the issue of the day is that the American people, we weren't keeping the faith, and Mr. Trump is going to keep the faith. And that starts with hiring leaders that'll do what needs to be done. And so I'm glad CQ Brown is gone. I'm glad the rest of the wokesters are out of here. And if I may, you got me, you touched my hot button right there. So let me tell you a little story. Imagine, okay, some trans person decides they want to join the military, and they want to join the military because they want to get trans surgery, right? So they come in, they get 2 days into basic training. They tell the DI that that's what they want to do. Next thing you know, they're pulled out of the ranks. All right. That person is now non-deployable, and their job is to prepare for their trans surgery. That trans surgery may take 2 years to do, but they are no longer deployable for the United States military. They're not going to get the opportunity, or they're not going to be deployed because they don't know how to do anything. But the worst part about it is they're going to be 100% disabled for the rest of their lives, which means they're going to get a disability check from the VA for the rest of their
That
days.
pissed me off.
Most people aren't thinking like that, but that's what's the real deal here. So these people that CQ Brown has signed off for, and the rest of the service chiefs have brought this DEI mess into it. It makes us combat ineffective. And the bottom line is, if you're in the military and you ain't in the business of killing people and breaking things, you're in the wrong business. So that's how I feel.
I got a funny comment. I gotta just post this. This is too funny. You'll understand it. I'll understand it, but a lot of Americans may not understand it. I served a tour over in Korea, so I get this, but I'm just gonna bring it up there. I'll bring it down, but I just thought that was pretty funny. So truthful troll, that was a good one. I'll just leave it
I
at
love
that.
it. I love it. Yeah, we got to hold these people accountable because these
Yeah.
folks have just come in and, I know a lot of really good people, especially in the cybersecurity business. You know how long that school is. I mean, the
Yeah.
government is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on that young pup to teach him or her how to do cybersecurity. And if their morale is down because they got to sit next to some person who is not displaying proper military bearing, then
Yeah.
we've just wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars and more. You know as well as I do. For every cybersecurity troop we got, the Chinese have 5.
That's right.
We
That's
can't
right.
afford.
People have no idea just what we're up against, for one.
There you
With the
go.
Chinese in particular. Like, if we had probably, well, I don't want to get into specifics, but I'll just say we had a lot more teams dedicated to China than we did to Russia or other countries that were a threat when it comes to cyber.
Yeah,
Everything was China focused, as it should be, because they had just an insurmountable number of teams, that were basically dedicated to hacking our systems and probing our systems and trying to bring them down. So it's something that I think, a lot of people have been upset with Trump in the past, making compliments, or talking nice about about the president of China. I understand what's going on.
it's
Trump's got a very
diplomacy.
delicate game he's got to play. That's right.
It's
And it's
diplomacy.
better that we have, yep, and it's better that we have peace. One of I had a rear admiral on the other night, and we were talking about naval strategy. And you know, I've been in the fleet battle lab when I was stationed in Japan, and seen the war games and seen the outcome. We win, but the cost is so enormous in a all out battle on the seas. We want to avoid that at all costs.
There you go.
And I think that Trump he uses just the right amount of lack of tact, I guess you could call it. you know,
Let's call him blunt. He's
he
blunt.
uses enough of the bully pulpit to put enough of the fear of God in these people that that they don't see him as all that predictable, and I think that's important. But he
There
also
you
is
go.
very quick to to bring about terms of peace with these folks. And I think, as at the end of the day, that's all of us, any of us really want. Anybody that's
Bottom line.
bloodthirsty wants to see us go to war with somebody is nobody that's ever served in the military, I think, because we know what the cost is. I've been fortunate not to have ever had to be in combat, but I have plenty of brothers in arms who have been in combat, and I have yet to meet anybody who has come out of that situation the same as they were when they went in. They've all have scars, as a result of it.
Oh yeah. There's an old song, Sting says the Russians love their children too. And we need
Yes.
to think about that. You
Yeah.
know, getting out here and doing all this whatever. Here's the deal. We were talking about DEI. Well, raising your right hand and saying that you will wear the cloth of your country is a very honorable thing. And as I said before, I'm sitting over here, fat, dumb, and happy in Colorado, flying satellites across the sky. 5 years later, I'm breathing, in burn pits in Iraq, thinking, how in the hell am I here?
Yep.
So your lottery, your ticket gets pulled and you got to go. And anybody that says no is, not a true soldier. So the issue of the day is I have no problem doing what needs to be done. But some of these people who come into the military to just get benefits, to get surgery
They
done
haven't
for
counted the
free, and they have
cost.
no intention of providing any service to the American people. That's so dishonorable.
Yeah. The first 2 years I was in the Army, I saw my family for 4 months.
Wow.
I had no idea that that's what it was going to be like.
Oh yeah.
So, but what ended up happening is I went through basic, I went to AIT, and I was a 74 Golf telecommunications computer operator maintainer. we had one of the longest AITs, but our unit was a mixed unit with a bunch of guys that were on a short, like I think we called them 31 targets. They were basically like radio operators, and
Mhm.
and so those guys, their school was like maybe 4 weeks or something like that, and we had so many guys that went AWOL that they kept us on lockdown, our
Wow.
entire unit. So my wife wasn't able to come out until like basically the last couple of months of my AIT, and then they sent me to Korea unaccompanied for a year. So
Wow.
yeah,
Welcome to the army.
yeah, right. But it really it cracks me up. But that famous line from the movie Patton, when he says, your heart may belong, or your soul may belong to God, your heart may belong to your woman, but your ass belongs to Uncle Sam, and it really is true. And so people need to count that cost. They need to
Yeah.
understand, that it's not just a job. You are making a commitment, and that's why when you get out of the military, you become a veteran. You're that's why you get honored,
Yeah.
on Veterans Day. That's why people, say thank you for your service and all that, because it really is a sacrifice. And, and unfortunately, the wives actually sacrifice just as much as we
Oh,
do,
they do. They do.
and
Funny story. Can I tell you this?
yeah,
So here it is. I'm 20 years in the service. Well, let's say, give it 19, 18, something like that. I just got back from the desert. We're in San Antonio, and the Air Force, I'm on a joint tour. So the Air Force has called me up and says, trying to come back to the big Air Force. And we already got an assignment for you. We're going to send you to Scott Air Force Base. You're going to take command, and we're going to send you right back where you came from over in the desert. And I sit down with my family. My son is about 10 years old. My daughter is 12. My wife, we're all sitting here in San Antonio, and I tell them the news. Hey, we're moving to Scott Air Force Base, and here's what's going to happen. And my daughter had this look on her face, like, because I'm usually gone all the time anyway. And my
right,
son, I knew it was time to get out, because you know what he said to me? Dad, it's okay. We're nomads. And that's when I
yeah,
knew I'd had enough. So, like I said, I took
yeah,
one more tour overseas, and they kind of swapped and allowed me to do that so I could go ahead and retire and get my 20 over years. My 20 over, I ended up being almost 21. But the issue of the day is I couldn't take another assignment because it was starting to affect my family. And just like you mentioned with your family, people have no understanding of how many birthdays and holidays that you miss, and you're off somewhere, doing things
yeah.
away from your family, and it takes a lot of toll out of you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure I haven't looked to see what the stats are on the divorce rate of people in the military, but I imagine it's got to be way higher than than it is for the average civilian.
It
Uh,
is.
I remember when I went to Korea, they had this in processing, at oh gosh, where was it? It was up in Yongsan, I think, at the Dragon Hotel or whatever. And
Been
they
there
were
many times.
yeah, they were saying, I remember they said, okay, everybody who's married, or they said everybody who's single, raise your hand. And about a good number of the people in the room rose their hand. He said, all right, half of you will be married according to statistic by the end of this tour. It's all right, how
Oh,
many of you are married? And I was one of them. I raised my hand along with a bunch of other guys, and they're like, all right, according to statistics, half of you will be divorced by the end of this tour.
yeah.
And I saw it, man. I saw it. It was brutal.
It's rough,
It was
man.
brutal. Oh yeah.
If I may, you're bringing out all
Yeah.
this soldier stuff for me. Can I tell this story? Here we go. So
Please.
a lot of people are complaining about the cuts that Trump's making. All right. Both of us have been government civilians. Both of us have been military people. Now, back in 1991, right after the Gulf War, a lot of us had just gotten back. We did dirty deeds for Uncle Sam. The country was on a high. Clinton had just taken over, and there was one specific guy. He was what we call an an air weapons controller, scope dope, AWACS guy. And
Hmm.
before he left to deploy, his wife divorced him because she
Mm.
didn't think he was coming back. So they had a child together. So he comes back. So everything worked out okay, but now he's divorced. So as soon as he gets back, the Air Force, in its infinite wisdom, decides that he's going to go to squadron officer school. So he's stationed in Missouri, and I'm in Colorado. We all converged down in Montgomery, Alabama to go to school. We're stuck there for 8 weeks. And we're supposed to be in a selective school, so everybody doesn't get to go to this. It's going to teach you how to be a better officer, yada, yada, yada. So while we're there, about 4 weeks in, he gets a letter from the United States Air Force. Now, I remind you, he's now a single parent. His daughter is with his family in Missouri, and he's down there at this Air Force school as a single parent. His wife just divorced him. The Air Force just said, you are, no longer needed. He got caught in the reduction in force.
Mhm.
So not only did he lose his wife and his family, but he lost his job. So that correlates to now, because I've been through 2 reductions in force in the military, and then people don't seem to understand that Bill Clinton got rid of 300,000 civilians. Did you know that?
I didn't know that
300,000.
about the civilian side, but
I
but
think it was like
I got
19.
caught up in the reduction in force, on the enlisted side.
Yeah.
So
So
and
this
they were
isn't
doing
new.
everything they could to
This
get rid of
isn't
people.
new. And how much severance pay did you get, by the way? Do you remember?
Nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing.
So I don't
Not a
want
damn thing.
anybody to lose their job. I feel bad for anybody that
Yeah.
loses their job, but this is not new. And Clinton was able to do it without a whole lot of fanfare. Trump is
Yeah.
trying to do his
Media
thing.
didn't even cover it.
The media didn't care. And so, as I said before, we got to toughen up. And this generation that's going through this right now, I feel tough for them. I've got good friends that are working for the government, but to tell you the truth, that a lot of them have had it very good for a very, very long time. And when I was at DHS, and Nate, stop me whenever you feel like it, because I got 1,000 stories.
Oh, hey, you
So,
know what? I love stories, so let's keep it going.
well, brother, let me tell you something. I'm serious. When I'm over at DHS in my last government job, I'm working for Mayorkas. I'm the Northcom rep there, which means I'm the 4 stars rep on the DHS staff. I see Mayorkas every day. He used to drive me crazy because he would pop in the door in the battle cab. Hey, Bernie, keep that DOD money flowing. And I'm like, yes, sir. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, where's my combat knife? But the issue of the day is that people don't understand that at least at DHS, 80% of the workforce was working from home.
Yeah.
So I'm there in an emergency essential position, working for another command as their representative. And you can walk those hallways, and there'll be times when you literally didn't see anybody, because just about everybody at DHS was working from home because of COVID. So
Yeah.
that's got to be fixed, because our federal government under Biden told all those people that they could work from home. And now Trump's got to bring them back. And, a lot of people are upset. But the issue of the day is this was a bad decision that Biden made, and Trump's going to have to deal with the aftermath. So I
Well,
don't know of any other way to handle it.
I do. One thing that I do hope that happens that Trump has talked about, and I think it's absolutely necessary. Because look, I've got people that are friends that are federal employees, and they're nervous, they're scared, they're worried.
It should be.
And I get it. And some of these people are really good people, that love their country and serve their country. But you're right. The fact is that by having people working from home, and not all jobs, but a lot of the jobs, you really do need to be on site in order to
Yeah.
be able to do your job. The problem that I see is now I was actually just literally yesterday talking to a friend of mine who works in the State Department. And she was telling me how bad the traffic is now that everybody has gone back to work in DC. I mean, it was so nice for, at least the last 4 years. And now it's a nightmare. One of the things that would solve that problem, move these agencies out of DC. They need to get them out of there. In fact, that is part of the problem, because 98% of the people who live in Washington, D.C. are far, far left liberal. And you can't have these agencies where their headquarters are all located in DC not be infiltrated with complete bias when you are located, in the heart of the swamp. They need to move them out into other states, move those locations out of there. And I think we would see a lot of improvement over traffic, a lot of improvement over the morale, a lot of improvement over the people. You know, you get because a lot of those people will get riffed and they will move.
Yeah.
And those people that move, they'll get affected by normal Americans that are outside of Washington, D.C. And before you know it, some of them may actually become more conservative because of it. I mean, there's so many benefits to moving them out of D.C.
Totally agree. Imagine this: Department of Agriculture, somewhere in Kansas where the agriculture is. Imagine. Department of Homeland Security, somewhere in Texas where the border is. Duh. Think about it.
Yeah, that
Not
makes sense to
DC.
me.
Nobody's trying. The British
Yep.
aren't coming down the Potomac River. It ain't going to happen. So bottom line is you got a good idea there. It's just something that needs to be thought about, and it would alleviate some of the congestion. So the swamp needs to be drained, and this is our only chance to get it done. So I say, whatever's happened, go Trump, go.
Yep, absolutely. I want to pivot our conversation a little bit to another topic having to do with veterans issues. One of the things that you know everybody always talks about is the suicide rate amongst veterans. How do we combat it? Because it seems to me that, and I don't even exactly know or understand why it is as bad as it is, but it is bad. It's far worse than any other, you know, population of people within the United States. And so, what's your take on it? You know, is Veterans for America First doing anything, you know, related to that, tackling that issue?
Nate, I tell you, two-part question. First, I'm glad you asked, because that's why I'm part of a Veterans for America First. I mean, we're literally trying to do things about it, and you know, people just get frustrated. I mean, we talked earlier. You know, some of these people have seen horrific things. I mean, I've seen things that I don't even talk about anymore, and I know you have too. We've lost friends, and we're not like normal people. And if you're going to come back here and think that you're normal after you've seen somebody's guts spilled in front of you, you'll never be the same. So a lot of these guys, I mean, I'm only speculating to why things are the way they are, but you know, I do know that we're trying to make things better, and there's a lot of other veterans organizations that are trying to do things, and you know, we are, you know, getting out in the community. We're linking up with other veterans groups. Captain Cornicelli, who is our president, he just was able to secure a grant from some rich person up in Wisconsin that's worth a lot of money. I'm not going to say exactly how much it was, but the bottom line is we're in the process of trying to spread that money among homeless veterans, and we're trying to spread that money, especially those people down in North Carolina that FEMA left hanging. That's another story for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, just absolutely crazy. But the issue today is about the you know, the concept of suicide. I mean, wow. I mean, as I said before, I've seen some crazy things in my life, and I've survived some crazy things. And I know as a veteran, I mean, you were talking earlier about the stress cards. Everybody ain't cut out for this. Everybody's not cut out for this. So some people, you know, the stress manifests when they're 30 years old or 40 years old or 60 years old, but we're carrying a burden that the average person will never understand, and you never know what's going to come out.
I think I know I can speak for myself that what got me through, and I mean, I went through some, you know, like I said, not combat situations, but I went through some very difficult times in the military, very trying situations, some situations that definitely, you know, I think led to some PTSD. But I'll tell you, what got me through it was faith.
Yes.
And had it not been for, and there were times where I thought I was going to lose my faith when I was in the military, especially when I was overseas. And it was the leadership, in fact, I'll never forget my lieutenant colonel having the entire, you know, command come out, and, you know, we were all, you know, there, and I think they were giving out battlefield hero awards, and I was awarded a coin, you know, for something I did on one of the exercises that we did. But he gave a speech, and he talked about faith, and he prayed with all the troops. And I know that kind of stuff, it impacted me without a doubt. And I know it impacted others. And it seems like that's one of the things that I think the military has gone wrong in the last 4 years, is this move, to incorporate all the, woke DEI stuff, and the move, really an anti-Christian um, move within the military. In fact, there are friends of mine. I don't want to say their names, but there are friends of mine still in the military right now that have told me how they've been persecuted because of their faith, especially when it came to the vaccine mandate. They filed a religious exemption, and they were wholesalely just ignored. Like they didn't give a damn
They don't
about
care.
about their religious exemption.
Well, that's
And
why I left.
many of these guys
I wouldn't take the jab. So, and I filed a religious exemption, and they turned me down. So I understand.
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, and I was just saying, it's just like the trust with a lot of these guys has been broken, and I was talking to some of my friends. I was one of the original signers of the military accountability letter that was sent out, that basically, where we called out the military for forcing, these vaccinations on folks. And I've talked to a lot of these guys, and I still talk to them, and and I'm grateful and glad that Trump has issued an executive order forcing the military to bring them back with full back pay. But a lot of these guys have said to me, I don't want to go back because the guys that forced me out are still there.
Yeah, they are.
And so I think there is some cleaning house that still has to happen within the military. And I think Pete Hegseth, I think that's going to be a challenge.
If I may, you're bringing back all these stories. I love getting with fellow military people and telling stories, man. That's what we are good at.
Yeah.
But I remember as a civilian when I was at Northcom, I used to have to go back there every 45 days, no matter what. And one of my bosses, a Navy admiral, wonderful Christian man, we were having a commander's call, and he mentioned he prayed. And that prayer got him fired. There were some non-Christian people in the audience, and next thing you know, they're calling the IG. And this was right before COVID, and they took that man down and reduced him a grade in rank before he was able to retire. And he's one of the best human beings I've ever met. And I think the military, that was kind of the beginning of all the woke stuff. But the bottom line is these people have infiltrated our military, and we have to root them out. So
absolutely,
what Trump is doing is extraordinary. I'm glad that he's stepping up. I pray for him. And the issue of the day is that, you're right. There is a lot of people who have infiltrated our military, and they're information operations. What did Sun Tzu say? The art of fighting without fighting.
Yep.
How do you weaken the military? Nobody wants to fight us, but if you weaken us from the inside, we are combat ineffective. That's what's going on here.
Yeah.
So,
well, we've got a good amount of people that are in the chat, and I want to just take a moment real quick to acknowledge folks, but before I do, I've got to run a couple commercial breaks. So I'm going to just run them back to back. It'll take about 2 minutes. So folks, stay with us, because when we get back, I want to go ahead and give an opportunity for some people that are in the chat to ask some questions. So if you guys have questions, think about what you want to say, and then go ahead and put that into the chat as soon as we get back from the commercial break. We'll be right back after a quick one.
Welcome to Shop with America, where the emphasis is on America. Our movement is to switch away from your shopping with the big box stores and the mega corporations back to supporting family-owned, made in America. We've been giving these big box stores our money every day for years. But what's happened is they forced many small businesses to shut down. We call this the illusion of choice. We see all these products in these stores, but in reality, it's only a few companies that control it all. There are thousands of lawsuits for health damage because they put profit over our people. But there is another choice. We found a better way. There's a family-owned American factory with product integrity and have always done things the right way for the right reasons. And this company outperforms the big box stores. That's due to their month-to-month shopping club. They make everyday consumer products that we all use and buy again and again, like toothpaste, shampoo, coffee, and organic beef. Go to shopwithamerica.us today.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. The game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped, and most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest. But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto, fine art, real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money. The kind kings and queens fought for and large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only, and right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show. And I've been here talking with Lieutenant Colonel Berney Flowers. And, you know, Bernie, I got to tell you, man, it's been a breath of fresh air to have you on the show. And it just, this is what I think our fellow veterans need. They need to have more time talking with their brothers in arms and sharing stories. And as we called it in Hawaii when I was living there, talking story. Because there's something about it that I think it connects you. And I think that's what happens is a lot of guys get out of the military, they get disconnected, and they lose that camaraderie and that brotherhood that they had when they were in. And, you know, they don't have that there to help support them, you know, through those dark times that they might, you know, experience. And I've really appreciated having you on, and I've appreciated your stories and you're listening to mine as well, and just sharing that back and forth with you.
That's what we do, brother.
I have a couple questions here in the chat. One here, I wanted Bible Prophecy Today News with West Virginia. Camille asked, you know, are we on Rumble? Yes. So it's a little tricky, folks. If you're looking for me on Rumble, you'll find me at the Patriots Prayer Network. So type in Patriots Prayer Network and you'll find me. I am on their network, and I'm grateful to them. They've done a lot of good things, and one of those things they do is there's a lot of fees involved in all of these things, and so they allow me to be on their network, and it's not as expensive as it would be if I was running my own channel. So, but I also multicast to X, and I also multicast to a YouTube channel, the Raising Cain Show. I have hardly any viewers on YouTube, but that's just the way it is. I do have 3 viewers on there tonight, but most of our viewers, we got almost 3,000 people right now, are coming from X, and so most of the people that are watching the show are watching it on X. And I want to thank you all for watching. It's been an amazing ride to be a part of this and see our channel grow, and have great guests on. Like you, Bernie. It's just been wonderful. Right now, we also have some other things I want to mention too. The last commercial that you guys saw was a documentary that was put on by Glenn Baker, also a military veteran who went through his own experience of injustice, and was falsely arrested and put in jail, and not denied counsel, denied his ability to even know why he had been arrested. And eventually he was exonerated and let out, but he lost his house, he lost his car, lost half of his business. While he was in prison, he got an infection that got into his eye and ended up losing his cornea over it. I mean, just unbelievable things. And his story is really powerful. But in talking with him, he asked me to be a part of that. And so you also get to hear my story of my whistleblowing and retaliation that came from that. You can find that at, if you'll see across the bottom of the screen, there's a ticker that's running. Also 7K Metals, if you guys are interested in finding out more about how to get started in gold and silver, even if you don't have that much money, they have a great program at 7K Metals that's really geared towards individuals that are just kind of starting out. And finishthisfight.us/Cain, you can find out more about that video. So Bernie, before we went to break, we were talking about a lot of this issues with suicide and all of that. What are some of the other challenges that you think veterans today are facing that don't get talked about a lot?
Well, here's the thing to me. A lot of us are patriotic, and up until Trump just got elected, it wasn't cool to be a patriot. Now, you may feel comfortable with this in West Virginia, but I ran for Congress twice in Maryland, and I got called every Uncle Tom in the book. But here's the point. Brother, I've been in 3-letter agencies for a long time, 34 years behind the fence to include my Air Force time. So I know what it's like to live in another country. I know what it's like to be in a place where they use cow pies to heat their homes, okay, and cook with, where they don't have running water. And so the issue of the day is a lot of our people have seen those sorts of things. And, so you're going to always, if you've been in a combat zone, or even if you've been over in Korea or some of those other places like that, where, there's a lot of beautiful places and people living there, in Seoul and the Dragon Hill Inn and all that sort of stuff. But then you go a little bit further out to some of those places, and then they're living in the third world. And you know that to be true. And it gets cold it gets pretty doggone cold over there. You know what I was about to say, but I'm not going to say that. Not on your air. But the issue of the day is that our patriots, our soldiers, I mean, a lot of us, we're patriotic, we are flag wavers, we get out of the military, you go back into the civilian world, and that support system just simply isn't there. And
that's right.
Some guys don't go to the VFW, some guys don't go to the American Legion, some guys are just introverts. A lot of us are, and especially people in the electronics business. I mean, let's just face it, we're nerds.
Yeah.
So so we just need to find each other and tell those stories. And I'm lucky to have a gang of buddies that I've never lost touch with, and we talk all the time. But you got to get those stories out, because people outside don't understand. They really don't.
Yep.
I'm not trying to put them down or anything, but just a lot of stuff that folks just don't get.
It's interesting. I remember when I got out, right after I got out, it's just that in and of itself is kind of funny, right? You think about it, right? The military is the only job that uses the same language as prison. Right? I'm doing my
Perfect.
time. I get out.
Yep.
I just got out. It's like
Yep.
it
You are
it is
correct,
funny,
good sir.
but it is. I'll never forget. My wife and we were, I don't know where we were, shopping somewhere, and we ran into to a couple, and the guy he was a I think a World War II veteran, and he had served a long time ago, but we didn't even have to say anything. But it was like there was this automatic, like I looked at him and smiled. It was like I knew the kinds of things that he's seen and been through and experienced, not just the battle, but just the life of a soldier. And
Yeah.
him looking at me, and we just kind of nodded at each other, and it was it was almost like a telepathic understanding. It was
And
such an
you can
experience.
pick one out of a crowd. I could, if I saw you physically right now walk 10 steps, I could tell who you were. Could tell that you were what branch you were in. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but you
It
could
is
tell the
weird,
same
but
thing
yeah,
about me.
right.
But
Yep,
another thing you were talking about, the military encourages alcoholism. Now, and
without a
at least
doubt.
the military that I was in, you know,
It's same here.
yeah, and we did a lot of drinking. Let's just
Yeah,
face it, all of us did,
yeah.
and a lot of people can't take that. So you get out, and you're away from your buddies. You're retired. You feel like you've accomplished something, but you got to go right back to work. And you know, a lot of people go into the bottle.
I'm
And
glad that you brought that up. I was contemplating about whether I wanted to share a story, but I'm glad that you brought that up. And because you did, I am going to share something. When I was in Korea, I had such loneliness, like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. For one, I had gone through basic training was a nightmare for me because I was like the lone Christian in this, and I was an older guy. I was like in my, early 20s when I joined. So everybody else was fresh out of high school, never been lived away from home. I had a wife and kid, and it was tough. And so I never felt like I really fit in. But then when they sent me overseas to Korea, that just compounded. And then on
yeah,
top of it, everybody was, very few people were trying to remain faithful. And I was. And so my way of dealing with it is I was fine during the week when I was working, but on the weekend, I would just drink myself until I passed out so that I didn't have to think about the
yeah.
fact that I was away from my family. And I'll never forget, um, it's like the worst day for me was Thanksgiving. I
Oh,
got stuck on CQ and ended up having to guard duty in our barracks, and my relief never showed. So I got stuck there for double duty because he probably got drunk and passed out
yeah.
somewhere.
And you're not
Um,
going to rat him out.
no way, no way. So by the time I finally did get relieved, I made my way up to the NCO club, and there was no turkey left. There was no mashed potatoes left. The only thing left was some cold green beans,
Yeah.
and you would think like big deal, but man, that was such a big deal to me. I was so depressed after that because for me, Thanksgiving was like the day, like even more
Yeah.
important than Christmas growing up. That was the day when the family came together and we all got together, and so I was looking forward to having that celebration with my fellow soldiers and I missed it. And I remember I went back, I was depressed, majorly
Yeah.
depressed. And what did I do? I went straight to the bottle. And it wasn't
You'll never
until
appreciate this country until you've spent a holiday overseas.
yes, yes. And I'll tell you, I remember I got into, the only way I felt like I fit in was when I went drinking with the guys. And so I started drinking a lot,
Yeah.
heavily. And
Yeah.
and I was at a bar just outside the base, and I came walking out of the bar, and I remember the birds were chirping. That's how long I was in the bar, all night long.
Wow.
And I was carrying, 2 beers, in both hands. And some guy came up to me and asked me who I was, and I said some choice words to him, and and told him, basically mind his own effing business. And
Yeah.
he pulled out his ID, and he was a U.S. Army major,
Mm.
and he grabbed me, hightailed me over to the MPs and had them put me on house, had me had them put me in my room and not let
Yeah.
me leave. And he never reported it to my official record or anything like that, which probably saved my life.
Oh,
As a
yeah.
couple other times I woke up in a turtle ditch over there,
Oof.
and but I'll never forget the next day. I after I was recovered, I think it was like I think I slept all Sunday long, and then Monday I had to be back at work, and I'm in the headquarters building, and here comes this guy in uniform walking down the hall, and he's got a chaplain's lapel. And I had cussed this guy out. I had cussed out a chaplain, and I felt pretty bad, man. I felt horrible. And he said to me, and because I had totally strayed and had been falling away from my faith, and
Yeah.
and part of it was I had seen just a I had seen another chaplain that to me was just a horrible example. So I stopped going to church, and then and then being overseas and isolated, I didn't really have any other options. But this guy came up to me and he goes, "How's it going, wild man?" And I said, "I'm doing all right, Padre." And we just started, and he asked me, "What are you doing for Christmas?" I said, "Probably drinking." And he said, "Well," he says, "I got a better idea. Why don't you come to my house for dinner, for Christmas dinner?" And
Nice.
I can't tell you what that meant to me, to be in a
Oh, yeah.
home with, even though I didn't have my wife or kid there, but to be in a home with his family. And it was me and probably about 10 other soldiers that he had invited it over to his house at Camp Humphreys. And we were, we were having our Christmas dinner, and we're going around the table introducing ourselves. And the guy next to me, I don't even remember his last name, because he always introduced himself by his first name, and his first name was Vet. And
Mhm.
he goes, "Oh, I'm Vet." And he says, "I'm the head counselor for the alcohol and drug rehabilitation." And I look over at the chaplain, I go, "You dirty dog."
No, dog,
But,
that's terrible.
I'll tell you what, though, that guy and that chaplain saved my life. And
Yeah.
I ended up getting clean and sober. And I had what I found was that, for one, Vet would just have these meetings, and we'd get together, and we'd all just share, what was going on in our lives and the stress, and it's kind of group therapy type thing. But
Yeah.
it was so important, because I finally realized I wasn't the only one feeling that way. Everybody, half the people on that base were going through what I was
Yeah.
going through. And it really did, I think, change a lot of things for me. But I'll tell you what, when I got back, I didn't know, like, how to even behave with my kids. I was like, I didn't know how to be a dad, because I was gone for the whole first year of my son's life. And so I
Yeah.
get home, and he's looking at me like, "Who are you?" And I remember I tried to pick him up, and he started crying because he doesn't know me.
Yeah.
And it was a very hard thing to adjust to. And then when and so I remember, luckily I had some good support system to help me, stay clean and sober. But man, there was a moment where I almost fell off the wagon. And um we had just started going to this church, and I got stationed at Site R right after I got back from Korea.
Been there.
Yep. And Fort Ritchie had been closed, so we were basically on our own, living out in the economy.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was tough. And we were broke. And I had this moment where my wife had started working. And so I'm dealing with the kids, and I don't even know how to be a dad. And, my kids are screaming and crying, and I'm not dealing with it right. I'm yelling at them and stuff, and feeling like I was this close to leaving my kids by
Yeah.
themselves and going to the bar.
Yeah.
And I something just came to me and said, "Go." We had visited some church, And so I went and I looked at, we had gotten a directory from this church. Ironically, it was a brethren in Christ, and they're pacifists. I didn't know that back then. I showed up in uniform at their church, but they were great about it. They didn't give me any hassle about it. But I started thumbing through this thing, like desperately looking for the pastor's name and phone number, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And finally, I saw one guy who was a deacon there, and so I decided, well, I'll just call this guy. I called him, and they were having a deacons meeting at his house, and the pastor and the elders and the deacons were all there. And I told him, I said, look, man, I'm about ready to fall off the wagon. I need prayer right now.
Yeah.
They prayed for me over the phone, and I literally was cured right then, like miraculous situation.
Prayer works, bro. Prayer works.
And it was powerful. So I know that faith is really a huge part of the answer. And I think having that support system, I think you're right. I think a lot of these guys also get into the military fresh out of high school. They've never lived on their own. They've never paid bills. They've never had any kind of, credit. They've never had to deal with, paying their utility bills because they've lived on base. They never had to pay rent because they lived on base. All of that. They get cut loose from the military, and now they're on their own with no experience on how to handle a checkbook or how to even deal with finances. So all of these things, are a really complicated problem, I think, in the military. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of guys that, are homeless, because of alcoholism, because of drug abuse, and because of financial problems, because they never got any training on it.
Yeah.
So,
and here's the thing. You mentioned about that being a young soldier with a family. Well, how many times have you seen people go overseas and get that Dear John letter? Mama don't want to be married anymore. Oh, by the way, you're getting ready to send 75% of your paycheck back to the United States because she's going to have your money with your kids and you're overseas broke. That will put you into a
one
box.
of the, like I said, I never experienced combat, but I saw enough. I had enough experiences that left me shaken. One of those was I was on guard duty, and I got a call from the CO. Wanted to, had heard, basically had heard something, came over to the barracks, and I was asked to be present because I was on, guard duty at the time. And one of our young soldiers had committed suicide in his room. He had he had gotten a Dear John letter from his wife that she was leaving him for his brother. So it was
happened.
It was like, not only had he been, not only was he losing his wife, but he was losing his family, his own. You talk about the ultimate betrayal. And he went to the TMC, complained of having backaches, got Vicodin, and took the whole bottle.
Yeah.
And it's something I can't ever get out of my mind, seeing the look on his face, and
these things stay with you, man. You're carrying that around, and a lot of people wouldn't understand, but I know we're sharing here, but I know you're telling the truth, and I'm telling the truth because these are common stories.
Yeah. I saw guys that we were over there. I don't know if you heard about it, but this was in 1998. This was when we had, I think it was like Uchi focus lens or something like that going on, or full eagle, one of those exercises.
I used to go every year.
And they had a whole mountainside that came down, and some tropo guys, talking about satellite, tropo guys were up there, and they came down with that side of that mountain and got killed. And I was scene for that too. So, it's like these things, it was like within 3 days, you had the suicide, you had that happen. And then there was on the border, there was a lightning storm, and it killed like 6 guys, all got hit. They were on patrol, got hit by lightning, killed them all.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, and like I said, it all happened like within 2 to 3 days. It was the weirdest thing. And then one of the guys that was getting ready to go home fell out. They were out. At first we thought he was drunk or something, but it wasn't that. He had a heart attack. But he was up sitting on the railing, second floor of the barracks, and fell off and landed head first. It was messy and it was bad. And his in fact, my lieutenant was like really good friends with this guy, and it messed him up, man. I'd never seen him like that before. But
Dude, this kind of stuff, the military is an inherently
yeah,
dangerous business, and people don't seem to understand. I mean, you're around electronics. You know, it's funny, you
yep,
know, I'm going to tell you this funny story because I was thinking about some ugly story to tell you, but so here it is. I wear a wedding ring like most people,
yep,
and you know, you'll be surprised. I worked my first 10 years were in aircraft maintenance, so I couldn't wear rings
yeah,
and couldn't
same.
wear jewelry. And my wife was upset with me because why don't you wear
I
your
had
wedding ring?
the same story
Whoa,
here, brother.
look at all these guys walking around with digits missing. No,
Right.
Denver, you can't,
That gold
you know,
ring is like
and
perfect contact with that capacitor. You're gonna blow that
yes,
finger right off.
or you know, blow your damn head off. How about that?
Yeah,
So the issue of the day is that there's just a lot of things that you experience as a soldier that other people don't understand. And you know, we laugh about that, but dude, there's a lot of folks running around here missing body parts, digits. I mean, I saw a guy get hydrazine poisoning working on F4 aircraft, and you know, this guy was 32 years old, E7 Master Sergeant Air Force types. There was a hydrogen failure on his aircraft, and
wow.
he was immediately retired immediately, and they shipped him out of Germany because he'll never be able to breathe right. These
Yeah,
chemicals that we're dealing with, or the, you know, like I said, I mentioned the burn pits earlier, and I'm not even telling you a quarter of some of the craziness. But here's the thing: you've been through the same stuff. The Army's a rough way to make a business, a
yeah,
rough way to make a living. And then, you
yep,
know, you're dealing in electronics and people get electrocuted, that sort of thing. Navy, Marine Corps, it doesn't matter. The military can be a rough business. And dude, I don't even want to tell this story because it would turn people's stomach. But you know, the issue of the day, it's rough on soldiers, and then
yeah,
you wonder why some 60-year-old guy is on the street drinking Jack Daniels every night. Well, he's reliving some of the crap that he's had to live through and the family that he's
yeah,
lost.
yeah. You know, despite all of the crap from the Army, I am grateful for the opportunity to have been able to serve my country.
Amen.
And I am also, I think, partly what, you know, the great thing about it is knowing that you're counted amongst those who have served. And when I think about like my father was scheduled to go out to Vietnam, and then
Yeah.
he ended up getting glass in his eye from a fight actually.
I
And
can't
so they
imagine that.
and the funny thing, well, the crazy thing about it is all the guys in his neighborhood that all ended up getting, sent out there, they all died. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
dad, you know, survived because he wasn't there.
God had
In
a
the
better
dirt.
plan for him.
Yep. But my grandfather and my great grandfather, and going all the way back to like the very, first founder of my father's line that came to this country prior to the Revolutionary War, they all served. My great grandfather, though, this guy, he was shot down in World War One.
Wow.
So he was part of the Marine Air Corps, which was loaned out to like Great Britain or whatever,
Mhm.
and was flying over Belgium, got shot down, captured by the Germans, put in the prison, and he was expected to they had to turn in all their stuff, right? When they went into the prison,
Yeah.
all their effects. And then one night, a German guard came into his cell, put a bag over his head, brought him out of the cell, and he thought he was going to be, executed. Gets driven somewhere, way out somewhere, and then walked out into the woods. The guy fires off 2 shots into the air, takes the bag off his face, and shows him this Masonic ring. And my grandfather was a
Wow.
Freemason. He says, "All right," points him to the Polish border and let him go.
That's
So that's how he
amazing.
got out of World War One
That
alive.
is amazing. What a blessing.
Then in World War Two, he served again. This time with he was with the air artillery, in New Mexico, and they were, I think it was like National Guard, but they got deployed during World War II, and he was in the Philippines when the Philippines got surrendered.
Ooh.
So he was a lieutenant colonel, and he was basically survived the Bataan Death March, was moved from Camp Davao, Cabanatuan, ended up at Bilibid prison in Manila. And, and I was trying to do some research into him, trying to find out what happened to him, because he was gone for like 3 years. He was in prison camp, getting beaten almost daily. He had, and I went to the National Archives, and I was able to see his testimony because he testified at the Tokyo Tribunal. And at the end of the day, when I finished reading through all these cards, I had to go home. I couldn't stay anymore. It just was like, it was so heavy to read this. Like, one of the things that was like just horrifying, we're taught, right, in the Army, in the military, if you get captured, you're supposed to use every attempt you can to escape. That's part of our training. And so, of course, he tried to escape, and he got caught. And the Japanese didn't punish. Well, they did, but they didn't directly punish him for that. No, they chained him and the other 2 guys that tried to escape to a fence, left them out, to be exposed all night long, and they paraded some of the guys that were sick in their unit that couldn't escape in front of them and beheaded them in front of them and said, "This is your fault." And so they did this kind of thing to him. They tortured him. He ended up at Bilibid prison. And what blew my mind was I came across a declassified, it says right on it, CIA dossier. It was obviously OSS at the time, but it had gone through probably some other folders or whatever. But there was this report in there about him.
Wow.
And he was the highest ranking officer at Bilibid prison, and him. And then some other guys, they had some other named guys that were at some of the other places. Because of that, he was allowed to leave the prison like once a week with a script to go buy rice to bring back in for the soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And it said that he was sneaking in medicine because a lot of the guys were dying from dysentery.
Yeah.
And then he was sneaking out information on the guard movements because they were planning for the Great Raid, because they believed that the Japanese were going to mass murder all of the prisoners of war, to avoid war crimes tribunals. And so he was also sneaking in like pages out of a Gideon Bible, and he was rolling them up, shoving them in the cracks on the inside of the latrine, because it was the only place the Japanese guards would not go. They would not go into their latrine.
Hey, where there's a will, there's a way.
And, and so finding that, just like when I see that kind of stuff and knowing what that generation went through, nothing I went through even compares.
Totally agree.
And I fear that this generation today is not made of the same thing, that generation was.
No.
And I hope it doesn't take some catastrophic event, to bring us to a place of that kind of strength, because he made it, he survived. And I got to know him for a short while. I think he died when I was probably about 6 or 7, but I remember going and going for walks with him.
Yeah.
And, I wish he was alive for me to be able to talk to him now, about some of his experiences. But thankfully, some of his soldiers wrote about those experiences, and they talked about, what they said was what got them through the times that he prayed with them, the times that he quoted scripture to him, the times that he snuck the little bits of scripture into the latrine. That was what got them through 3 years of hell on earth. And,
people don't realize how vicious the Japanese were.
Oh, yeah.
We talk about the Nazis, but the Japanese were literally performing experiments on their prisoners. Yep. I don't know that the Germans did that to outside of the Jews, but they treated the prisoners not as badly as some of that stuff the Japanese did is still classified.
Yeah.
So he probably went through a lot more than he wrote down.
There's some stories that I've heard that I've not seen written down, but they're things that have been passed down, from other family member that had a chance to talk to him. And
Yeah.
there were things like, they did things like putting bamboo shoots up underneath their fingernails and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine that. That's got to be that's got to be some of the worst pain.
I can't even, first of all, calling ourselves soldiers and comparing ourselves to that World War II generation, we pale in comparison. We
Yeah.
really, really do. I mean, it was just, they were in a life or death struggle, and we're over here making war on people. In a lot of cases, we don't have to be there. But in
Yeah.
their case, they were fighting for their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yep.
totally different.
Absolutely. And that's a good point. And that's another thing too that really kind of it grates my nerves when I see like these really hawkish folks that want us to be involved in every war on the planet.
Yeah, like
And
Hillary Clinton and John Bolton and those people
yep,
like that. Met him
exactly.
one time, wasn't impressed at all.
Yep.
Shakes hands like a wet fish. But that's
Yep.
another story for another time.
I got to see him. It was a few years back, but I was actually at the studio for Fox News in DC, and I got to
Mhm.
sit in some friend of mine knew Tucker Carlson's producer, and so we were able to sit in the back
Yeah.
as he was doing an interview, and that night happened to be John Bolton. And he tore into him and just let him have it. And it was hilarious because at the end, I got to see off camera what happened. And at the end of it, he took his earpiece out and threw it on the table. He was so mad.
Never met a
Walked out.
war he didn't like.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those guys like that. I mean, they're already signing us up for this, that, and the other, already ready to go. And most of these people are these Ivy League types that, wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight. So there you
Yep.
go. Guys like that, I can't stand them. And,
Yeah.
they're the neocons are the ones that literally, chastise Trump so much in his first generation and, in his first time in office. And now he's gotten rid of all those characters. Imagine
Well,
what he's
and
going to be able
they're
to do.
worse, in my opinion, they're worse than the Democrats, because at least the Democrats, you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But the neocon pretends to be a conservative. They
They're
pretend
saboteurs and
they
they're
are, and they are
yeah,
saboteurs, and they're vindictive and vicious,
yes.
and it really, like Millie, that going back to Millie, I still to this day think about that moment when Trump made a public statement and then he immediately calls China. Oh, we're not going to do that. Don't worry about that.
That's treason.
Exactly. I don't know how the hell he was not court-martialed for that. Well, I do know
Yeah,
because you had people, at every level
protecting
at the
them.
Pentagon that were corrupt.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do. And when I say earlier, about having grace with some of the people that Trump's chosen, they got a big job to do, and we don't know
They
what's
do.
going on behind the scenes.
We got to
So
pray for them.
we can't be mad. We just got to pray for him and know that Trump was put in place for a reason, and that reason is us. This is our
Yep.
last stand. This is our last chance. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I was explaining how all this stuff works. For example, and you got me going. I hope you let me tell this story.
Please.
So here it is. You know, a lot of people are wondering, all these people that got, are being, fired, whatever, sent home, whatever. Well, the first thing Trump's doing is going after the people on probation. Well, a lot of people don't understand how this works, but I know you do. Okay.
Mm.
Imagine you were an SES or even a political appointee for the Biden administration. You've been there 4 years. You're making roughly $200,000 a year. Life is good. And you're ruining our country by signing off on all this money going away. All right. But you want to stick around. So what you do is before Trump gets in, you transfer your position to be a civil servant. So you're a GS-15. Maxed out GS-15 makes a lot of money. I was one, I know. But the issue today is now that person, because they changed positions, even though at a very senior level, they're on probation. That's who Elon Musk is looking for. There's going to be some collateral damage, don't get me wrong, but those saboteurs, this is the only way to get them out of the government. Have you thought about that? Yeah, this is what they're doing. Man, I'm losing some sound here. We just lost our. I can't hear you.
Sorry, that was me. That was me. I muted my mic there by accident.
No,
No,
sorry about
yeah,
that.
you are absolutely right. In fact, it's going to be very difficult for them because it's at every level, at the high echelon, all the way down to the lower levels. And in fact, they've got even issues at the academies.
Yes,
And they've brought in all of these woke, folks. Many of them, with tenure. They're
yes.
going to have to deal with that. It's going to be it. Unfortunately, a lot of what we're seeing right now, it's going to be messy. There's going to be a bit of a bloodbath because they've got to deal with this, and there's going to be collateral damage, and folks
Oh
are going to
yeah.
have to understand that.
We don't have a choice though,
No,
because people don't understand. And okay, right at the time of the election, we owed as a national debt about $27 trillion, which is absolutely ridiculous. But between the election and the time Trump took office, Biden added another $10 trillion in obligations.
yeah,
Okay. That's, 300 and some odd $1,000 per person, per taxpayer that we owe. So we've got to get this thing turned around. We can't afford. And I mean, it's
yeah,
desperate times call for desperate measures. And a lot of people are upset because Trump's not being a nice guy and he's not giving people a time to recover. Well, the issue of the day is these saboteurs have to be moved out. And our personnel system is such that the only way to get rid of these people is take a wholesale swath and cut out the rot. A lot of people will be brought back at some point, but we got to get rid of these saboteurs. They've got to go.
yep. Do you think that a lot of that excess spending was more than just people wanting to, do different pet projects, but was actually sabotage of the U.S. economy prior to Trump taking office?
Yes, I think personally, I know I'm going to sound like some conspiracy theorist, but I read two of Klaus Schwab's books,
Mm,
and he and Yuval Harari and these rich billionaires, they're truly our enemy. They
yeah,
really
they are.
believe with them to be almost like a separate species. And so their whole point is to take down American style, the republic, and we are the only thing standing between them and chaos, us and chaos. So the issue of the day is they overbear us with debt, and then we can't pay our debts. And if you owe somebody, I mean, you're a slave if you're in debt. So that's the bottom line. So that was their strategy. And I have nothing against the Chinese people. I got nothing against the Russian people. I got problems against their governments. These oligarchs
Yep.
are going to be the death of us unless we stand up and fight. And we got a leader that's willing to fight them. And let's make this thing happen. But
Amen.
the bottom line is that you know this kind of debt is unprecedented, and I'm not going to say insurmountable, but it's got to be dealt with. And how do you deal with an elephant? Eat them one spoon at a time. So that's what we're doing.
Yep, that's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
bro.
Well, Bernie, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on, and man, we could talk for another probably 2-3 hours, I'm sure. But we're
Man, I
we're
feel
coming
like
up.
I've known you for years. I've watched your show before, but dude, I mean, anytime you need me, call me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you've got my number now, and I've got yours, and we definitely got to talk again.
I love it.
I want to just I always like to ask my whoever my guest is, that we've talked about a lot of different subjects tonight, and so I want to give you an opportunity. We got about 3,500 people live watching. What is if there's one thing that people take away from our conversation tonight, what do you think is the most important thing for people to remember?
Pray for our president to be successful. That's the bottom line. He's the only shot we got, and he is an imperfect vessel. We know this, but Moses was a murderer. Did you know that?
That's right.
Those biblical patriarchs that we
Noah was a
study,
drunk.
yeah, those dudes was chopping heads, man. So the issue of
Yeah.
the day is maybe we've got somebody who may not be perfect, but he's perfect for us. And the Creator sent him to our way. Get behind him, support him, whatever you can. And we'll get through this. We will.
Yes, we will. Yes, we
Yes,
will.
we will.
Well, Bernie, I always like to end our show with prayer, so I'm going to go ahead and do that and close us out with prayer, and then we'll let people know where they can follow you and me as well. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you so much, God, for all that you have done, especially for giving us the opportunity to live in the time right now where we're seeing the miraculous taking place, Lord. Lord, we thank you, God, that you are chosen to save our nation and not allow it to completely fall. And I pray, God, that you would give Trump and his cabinet the wisdom that they need to do their jobs effectively, and that you would give them all of the tools that they need, that you would help them to root out the enemy within, that you would help them to find those that are saboteurs and who are trying to go against the will of the people, and that they would remove those folks. And Lord, I pray for all of the innocent that are going to get caught up in this, that you would be with them and that you would encourage them in their dark times. And those that are worried, that are good people, that are worried about their jobs and their future, just comfort them and help them to make it through this. And God, we pray for peace in our country and peace in our world. Lord, we pray for peace in Israel. And we pray that you would bring about a resolution to the situation there, and also peace in the Ukraine, and that you would bring resolution there as well. And God, I do pray that you would also be with those in Africa, particularly in the Congo, that recently, Lord, where Christians were murdered and beheaded. I pray that you would help. I pray that you would bring to justice all of those evil and wicked people, Lord, who are trying to destroy human life around the planet right now, God. Just pray for your blessing, Lord. Your blessing for everybody watching the show right now. And I pray that you be with them and just guide and direct us as a country, as a nation, and help Trump to be able to meet the goal of making America great again. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well said.
So, Bernie, where can people follow you? Are you on social media?
I sure am. I'm the prototypical loudmouth. So I'm out there. I'm on, let's see, X with Veterans for America First. Those guys are absolutely awesome. I recommend you follow them. You can find me at BernieFlowers.com. I've got a podcast, the Loyal Opposition Podcast. Nate, you look like you've frozen a little bit, man. Is everything okay?
Yeah, I think our video is frozen. That's all right. I can still hear you. Hopefully the
Okay.
audio. Oh, there it's picking
There
up
you
again.
go. And so
Yeah.
I'm on Rumble. I kind of started my whole little YouTube thing, social media thing. I'm on, what do you call it? Facebook. When I was working where we were working together over at Fort Meade, I was told stay off of Facebook. But
I remember those days.
yeah, man. But here's the deal, man. When I ran for office, I was so angry. 22 18 February of 2022 was my last day working for DOD. And 19 February, I marched my happy butt down to Annapolis and applied to run for Congress. And I gave them a good run. Dude, between two campaigns, I spent $90,000 on my own money. But the issue of the day is money well spent, because it's waking people up. I might not have won, but the next guy will. But I'm all over social media. Just don't call me. Yeah, just BernieFlowers.com. And, I'm easy to find. And if anybody's got any questions, shoot me some email or text or whatever you do, because this is an existential crisis and we need to fight our fight. We can't back down, and we got to support our leaders, because, when you hear Klaus Schwab talking about 2030, he means it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he does. Yep.
We can't let this happen.
Yeah. No, I really do. I think that it's funny, the fact that you ran for Congress, that's another thing we have in common. I ran for Congress here in West Virginia.
Amen.
And, I ended up spending $40,000 of my own money. But,
bro.
I don't regret it one bit. And so many amazing people I met in the state. And I've made friends for life because of that experience.
Same here.
And I'm sure you did as well. Yep.
Yeah, bro. So we just got to fight the fight, and you know, what do you call it? A mass of patriots, you might say.
Yes.
This is the only way to do it. The only way.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
folks, you can follow me at Nate Cain for WV on pretty much all social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on True Social, Getter, Gab, of course, X. You know, pretty much if it's out there, I'm probably on it at Nate Cain for WV. And you can also find this show as well as all my other shows at theraisingcaneshow.com. But on Rumble, it's just remember, if you go to Rumble, go to the Patriots Prayer Network. So want to thank everybody for joining tonight. We've had a long, lively discussion, and we've gotten into some really important, I think, topics that, you know, I think is an educational night for a lot of people. But thank you all for joining, and thank you for sticking with us. And I pray a blessing over all of you. And remember to stay strong, stay vigilant. Remember to pray for our president and for our cabinet and for his cabinet, and pray for our nation that we can work through this mess that we're in right now, economically, and you know, with all of the sabotage and booby traps, I'm sure that the previous administration has set for Trump. He's going to have to navigate his way through it, and his cabinet members are going to have to navigate that as well. So just remember to pray for them and lift them up. God bless you all, and have a great night.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.